For 3 days, more than 300 James Madison University students were divided into family groups. The family units vary. There were two-parent homes and single-parent homes. Each family was tasked with working out issues of poverty.
But for most of our students, they're not challenges that they have commonly had to experience themselves. And so this simulation gives them an opportunity to kind of walk a mile in those shoes, if you will.
Rhonda Zingraf is a JMU Associate Dean for the College of Health and Behavioral Studies.
The purpose of the simulation is to give students who are going into health and human service careers and teaching careers and public policy careers an opportunity to really have some deeper understanding of what life in poverty is like.
Zingraf is also director for the Institute for Innovation for Health and Human Services. She says students participating in the poverty simulation are expected to learn what it means to not have enough money.
The conditions that they face change with every week, which is what happens in real communities and in real life.
The focus of the poverty simulation is to have students to go beyond reading assignments in the classroom. Zingraf explained one of the scenarios.
You would have an elder in your home who is somebody you don't want to leave alone because of some disability, but you've got to be at work, and you've got a child who's at school, and then you find out that your child has been suspended from school, and then you don't want to leave your job, you can't leave your child unsupervised, you've already got an elder that you're worried about, and if you leave your work, you're not going to be able to pay your utility bill.
Most of the challenges in the poverty simulations have been scripted.
This is part of a curriculum that is well designed to actually be sure that within the community in the room, things that commonly do occur to people who are in poverty are going to occur for these families.
Although there are times when role-playing went off script.
I brought two people into my home with them right from me.
Who are you? How old are you? Tell them.
I'm an 85-year-old senior citizen on Social Security. I have two other senior citizens as well for $100 a month.
Yeah, and they started off in the homeless shelter, right? Yeah, so we had some families start off in the homeless shelter.
The things that happen that we may not anticipate would be like the young gentleman who was in the room today who was a disabled person and found that he could take in people who were homeless, and by doing that, by extending a helping hand, he was able to do something for himself but also do something for other people in meeting their needs.
The simulation forces students to navigate their families through poverty issues.
So that when they graduate and leave us and go on into their careers, they will take with them an added measure of insight and recognition, so that when they are being the teacher, being the nurse, being the physician assistant, being the social worker, etc., for individuals in the community, they're going to have some greater understanding about what poverty can do to inhibit families.
Abby Condi is a junior at JMU who took part in the poverty simulation.
As a future educator and a student in practicum, currently I deal with a lot of students who have experienced or are living in poverty, and so I thought it was very insightful to see the different lives of families who are affected by poverty.
The JMU junior says she did learn something from the simulation.
Poverty comes in many different forms, and it can hit families in many different waves, and some it hits harder than others.
Brittany Glennon is a senior at JMU. She volunteered as a school teacher during the poverty simulation.
We had little forms that we would send home to ask for money for field trips or projects and supplies, and so that put pressures on the families at home to kind of donate money to the school teachers, because we don't even have the money to get the supplies ourselves.
Glennon says her eyes were open to other factors outside of school which hinders children from learning.
It's really interesting because I guess this simulation kind of really represents how many factors go into poverty, and so even as a school teacher, we obviously send kids home and you don't understand what happens at home, so the fact that we obviously see all the different factors within this one room, teachers don't usually see that, and so it was really interesting to kind of understand that.
After volunteering in the poverty simulation, the JMU senior agrees with educators across the state.
I would definitely say schools need more funding themselves, especially in areas that have a lot of poverty, just because, for instance, we sent home a slip for a field trip and it was $5, I think, and a lot of students couldn't even have the $5. So say it was a real field trip, then the students would just have to sit in the principal's office, how one of the directors was saying earlier. And so it's kind of sad to see that they are being punished just because they don't have the money, when in reality they don't really have control over it.
Kara Kavanaugh is a JMU assistant professor in early elementary and reading education program. Kavanaugh volunteered as a caseworker in the housing department.
I gave away housing vouchers for people who qualified. Sometimes they qualified if they came in the first 2 weeks, but what often came is they didn't have time to come during that time, and so they came during the 3rd and 4th weeks, and by that time there was a waiting list, so they often were turned away from receiving housing benefits.
She will be using what she learned during the simulation in her class.
Definitely, I saw an opportunity for teaching my students next week in terms of they have, people think that there's all these shelters, or they think that there's all these resources out there, and in reality, people often don't know about them, or they don't know about them in time, or they don't have a way to access those resources because they might be in a different part of the state. And so when I saw the look on their faces, I can definitely use that in the classroom next week and throughout the rest of the semester.
In Harrisonburg, Elaine Rackley for Breaking Through News.